In the far reaches of a galaxy teeming with hidden wonders, the Braun Market stood as a dark crucible of cruelty. It was said that everything under the twin suns had a price within those winding corridors: a slab of stolen technology, a vial of exotic serum, or a living soul. Sprawled across an ancient outpost scarred by decades of conflict, the market drew the unsavory and the desperate like moss to an ominous flame. Ryder, a solitary bounty hunter whose name seldom graced the official databanks, stepped off his battered transport onto the stinking mud of the Braun Market's landing zone. Even the air there seemed stale, thick with the reek of spilled oil, sour sweat, and the metallic tang of scorching plasma. He kept his cloak drawn tight around his tall frame, shoulders taut from years of tension, and his eyes shaded by a broad helm that hid more than his identity. Those who noticed him might guess at his occupation, but few dared to cross his path. The market, with its flickering neon signs and labyrinth of cramped stalls, was no place for conscience or mercy. Here, logic was overshadowed by greed, and any newcomer was wise to move with caution. Ryder took in the swirl of life around him: dealers hawking contraband, captives led on leashes, and mercenaries watching for the slightest hint of profit or trouble. He had come with a singular aim: to find the one called Eona. Of her, little was known. Some whispered she was once a warrior of a vanished empire, rumored to have been betrayed or captured in the final throes of some distant skirmish. Others claimed her unusual heritage made her valuable to those with a taste for unique specimens or advanced modifications. But it was the bounty, posted by the collective, that painted her as a prime target. Despite the promise of a hefty sum, Ryder felt a quiet disquiet from the moment he first read her name in that ominous file. He moved deeper into the throng, guided by a hidden tracker that pulsed with faint signals whenever it approached the source of Eona's subdermal tag. The device was encrypted in the unusual frequencies favored by the collective. Ryder assumed it was standard procedure for them: mark a target at the first opportunity, then wait for an unsuspecting hunter to do their dirty work. A sour-faced vendor tried to lure him with a display of shimmering crystals rumored to hold psychic properties. Ryder ignored the pitch, pressing on through twisting aisles. At last, he came to a dimly lit corridor lined with cages, makeshift pens built from salvaged hull plating, sealed with humming force barriers. Here, flesh trade was routine, and any captive who showed fear was punished at once. His hand tightened on the hilt of his sidearm. He despised this place more than words could convey. The glint of the force barriers set his teeth on edge. At a glance, he saw sorrow in the eyes of many behind those bars: exiled nobles, rebellious colonists, and a host of innocents labeled criminals by tyrants. Yet it was none of them he sought. He moved slowly, scanning each gloom-shrouded cell, searching for someone. Then he saw her. Eona stood at the far end of a cage, arms pinned by magnetic shackles that glowed with faint energy lines. She was tall and willowy, her hair the color of faded embers, and her gaze sharper than any blade. Even in her captive state, there was a raw presence about her, a gravity that pulled the eye and ignited curiosity. Ryder felt something shift in his chest, an emotion he rarely let surface. He told himself this was just another job, that the credits were enough reason to see it through. Yet, as he walked closer to the cage, her eyes locked on his. In that moment, he saw neither surrender nor fear. He saw defiance, a steadfast will that refused to break. "Who are you?" Her voice was hoarse from disuse. He didn't answer, only held her gaze. It was the slaver next to him who snarled, brandishing a baton that crackled with a jolt of current. "Back up, bounty man. You don't speak to the merchandise unless you've got the credits to pay." In a deft motion, Ryder showed the man a flicker of a data chip bearing the insignia of the collective. The slaver's sneer wavered, the baton lowered. "Ah, you're with them. Well, you'd better hurry. This one's got plenty of other eyes on her, and there's rumor she might fetch a fortune." Ryder nodded, feigning indifference. He tried to catch Eona's gaze again, but she had closed her eyes, as though she had withdrawn into an inner refuge where no one could reach her. He felt a pang of something akin to pity. In this realm of cruelty, it was better to numb oneself than to endure the daily horrors. Minutes later, he found himself standing before the seedy auction block where Eona, stripped of all dignity, was paraded around like a prize. The auctioneer, a bloated figure with reptilian scales, extolled her to the crowd, claiming she was a rare specimen from a defunct warrior clan. The throng was raucous: scavengers, unscrupulous aristocrats, and the most hardened criminals of the sector, all vying for a chance to bid. Eona's eyes scanned the faces in front of her, seemingly unimpressed by them all, until she spotted Ryder again. There was the briefest flicker of recognition, a slight narrowing of her gaze. She knew he was no simple spectator. The auction began. Numbers were hurled from all corners, the price quickly surpassing usual slave costs. Ryder joined in, careful to mask his voice so no one would guess his real intention. Each time he raised the bid, the crowd gasped. A hush fell when the sums climbed to absurd heights. Sold, the reptilian auctioneer finally proclaimed, pointing a gnarled finger toward Ryder. The murmurs erupted anew, and Eona's chain was handed over. She did not yield, not even when her shackles were shifted from stage to buyer. Her posture remained upright, her jaws set, and she allowed no sign of submission. Ryder signaled for a moment of privacy to examine his purchase. He led her through the dingy corridors behind the main auction stage. The slavers cleared a path, spurred by the authority they believed Ryder represented. Once they were out of earshot, he turned to Eona. "We have to move quickly," he murmured. She stared at him with wary curiosity. "Move where? I have no illusions left. Are you going to hand me over to the ones who posted that bounty?" His jaw tightened. He recalled the images that had flashed across his data pad earlier, the official order from the collective, their meticulously worded directive, and the hush-hush nature of the mission that promised a grand reward. Something about it had felt rotten from the start, something that reeked of conspiracy. "We have to make it look convincing," he said at last, leading her toward the docking bays. "But I'm getting you out of here." Her expression shifted. A confusion laced with a glimmer of hope flickered across her features. But she schooled her face to neutrality. "Why?" He gave a half-shrug. "Because no one deserves what they plan to do with you." They traversed the winding corridors, stepping over broken crates and discarded relics. The slavers, apparently satisfied with the credentials they believed Ryder to hold, paid them no heed. They reached the Orion, his ship, a tried and battered vessel that he had painstakingly upgraded over the years. To some, it might have looked like a junker. To Ryder, it was sanctuary. He nudged Eona up the ramp and brought her to the cargo hold. There, with a quick movement, he used an electromagnetic key to release the shackles around her wrists. The clatter of freed restraints echoed in the confined space. She rubbed her bruised wrists, blinking at him with eyes that now held an unguarded mixture of gratitude and disbelief. You're not one of them." A wry smile teased his lips. "Not really. Just a bounty hunter who prefers not to deliver a victim into their hands." He paused, unsure if explaining would help. "Something's off about this job. I saw it the moment I took it, but I didn't know how else to draw close. I needed to get you out before they did something worse." Eona's body trembled with adrenaline that refused to fade. "So you risked your standing here, your life even, to, what? Set me free." He met her gaze, feeling that old ache stirring in his chest again. "Let's get off this rock before we talk any further." In the cockpit, he fired up the Orion's engines, scanning the control panels for any sign of tampering. Reassured that all systems were green, he eased the ship from its docking clamps. The main thrusters roared to life, and the vessel ascended into the murky atmosphere of the Braun Market's planet. But as the Orion burst into the upper stratosphere, alarms blared. A blockade of privateers or perhaps official agents was waiting, scanning every departing ship. Over the comm, a hostile voice crackled, demanding identification. Ryder muted it, exchanging a glance with Eona. They must have realized something's up. Eona nodded grimly. "We won't get far without a fight." With deft maneuvers, Ryder switched to manual piloting. The Orion bobbed and weaved through the blockade's perimeter. Laser turrets flared in the darkness, lighting up the viewport with brilliant lances of color. Eona strapped herself into a seat behind Ryder, tension visible in her knuckles as she gripped the safety bar. He pushed the throttle to full burn, the ship vibrating under the strain. The blockade loomed as a ring of menacing silhouettes silhouetted by the planet's pale glow. The Orion's shields flickered, taking glancing hits from plasma bolts. Ryder's jaw set in concentration. If he threaded the gap just right. There was a tremendous shudder as an enemy fighter clipped the Orion's aft section, but by a stroke of luck or skill, the ship maintained course. The next instant, they were free, drifting out into the starlit void of open space. Eona let out a breath she must have been holding. Ryder continued to push the Orion's engines, aiming for an FTL jump point. The calm voice of the onboard AI suggested the jump calculations were nearly complete. "You might want to brace," Ryder muttered. "Faster-than-light jump can be rough in these conditions." She offered the faintest smile. "I've endured worse." The stars elongated into bright ribbons of light, and the Orion surged forward, escaping the gravity well of the Braun Market star system. In moments, they were enveloped by the swirling distortions of FTL travel. The hum of the drives filled the cockpit like a restless hush, the entire reality bending around them, until they emerged in the emptiness between recognized sectors. Safe for now. Exhaling, Ryder removed his helm, revealing angular features haunted by old scars and deeper regrets. Eona studied him, the tension in her eyes gradually giving way to cautious respect. "Where do we go?" she asked quietly. He checked the NAV charts. "We should find a hidden port, someplace the collective's influence won't reach so quickly. I know a sector on the fringe, the Helion Drift. It's chaotic out there, but I have contacts who owe me a favor." Eona nodded slowly, massaging the marks the shackles had left. "You've saved me from one cage. But there'll be more traps, won't there?" Ryder's voice grew soft. "They'll chase you because you're valuable to them. Don't think for a moment they'll give up easily." He took a breath, summoning courage for what he was about to say. "But I won't let them catch you again." She studied him anew, this solitary bounty hunter who had broken all professional rules to rescue a stranger. "Why do you even care?" He hesitated, searching for words that might clarify the tangle in his mind. When none came, he settled for the simplest truth. "Because everyone deserves a chance to fight for their own freedom, Eona. And from the look in your eyes, you still have fight left." She stared at him for a moment before her gaze flickered away. When she spoke again, her tone was subdued. "You've given me more hope than I've known in a long time. I won't waste that." They lapsed into silence, the quiet hum of the Orion systems their only companion. Outside the viewport, stars shimmered coldly, ancient witnesses to countless tragedies and triumphs. In that cosmic tapestry, two wandering souls found themselves bound together by a spark of defiance. The bond was tenuous, perhaps even destined to be tested by the fires of pursuit and betrayal, but in that moment, under the glow of distant suns, they had each other, and for now, that had to be enough. They emerged from FTL near the fringes of the Helion Drift, a region notorious for spatial anomalies and roving pirate gangs. The Orion's hull groaned softly as the gravitational eddies of the drift pulled and twisted at the ship's course. Ryder plotted a careful path through the swirling clouds of cosmic dust, mindful of the gravitational pockets that could snare unsuspecting travelers. Eona watched the swirling vortices beyond the cockpit window, her expression pensive. She was dressed now in spare clothes Ryder had offered, simple, practical attire that still felt oddly luxurious after the rags and restraints of captivity. Though she remained guarded, her posture conveyed a determination that gave her an aura of quiet strength. "You've navigated this region before?" she asked, breaking the silence. Ryder offered a curt nod. "Once, a long time ago. There's a salvage station near the drift's outer rim, called Nady's Port. It's run by a family of old smugglers. They owe me for a job I did in the past. If we're lucky, they'll grant a safe harbor." Eona studied him, as though trying to parse the layers beneath his reserved demeanor. "You must have seen a lot, living this life." He shrugged. "Been to too many worlds, chased down too many marks. The collective's got its fingers in more pies than you'd believe, and I was never partial to their brand of tyranny. But when you live on the fringes, you take jobs that keep you flying." She nodded thoughtfully. "I understand survival. I just never thought I'd be running in circles across the galaxy, relying on the mercy of a stranger." Ryder cast her a sidelong glance. "I'm no saint. We're both in danger now, because I couldn't just walk away. I won't blame you if you decide to part ways after we land." Her lips formed a tight line. "We'll see." There was no hostility in her tone, only a subdued resolve that hinted she might not be so quick to abandon him. She turned her gaze back to the cosmic swirl. "For now, all I want is to keep them from taking me again." He understood. In the shifting lights of the Helion Drift, he caught a glimpse of her reflection in the glass, and for a moment, he imagined how broken she must have felt when they pinned a price on her head. He decided he would help her see it through, at least until she found some semblance of freedom or security. The sensors beeped softly, alerting them to the presence of Nady's Port. The station was a hodgepodge of welded hulls and rusted scaffolding, orbiting a small planetless star. It looked more like a floating junkyard than a settlement, yet it bustled with life. Merchant ships, battered freighters, and sleek contraband vessels came and went in a steady trickle. Ryder eased the Orion into a docking corridor, punching in old authorization codes. He half expected them to be expired, but the station's archaic systems accepted them with a beep of approval. A grin flitted across his face. Sometimes the old connections still worked. Their assigned berth was a rickety platform that shuddered slightly as the Orion's landing gear touched down. Magnetic clamps secured the ship, hissing as the atmosphere equalized. When the bay doors ground closed behind them, Ryder exhaled in relief. He led Eona through the airlock into the station. The corridors were dimly lit, lined with patches of metal plating that told stories of hurried repairs. Workers hurried past, lugging crates of components or engaged in heated arguments about salvage rights. No one paid them much mind, for strangers were commonplace here. Eventually, they reached a wide space serving as a sort of tavern or marketplace. The din of rowdy voices and the thick smell of spice-laced beverages filled the air. Ryder led Eona to a corner table. "Stay close," he muttered. "I'll see if I can find our contact." She nodded, surveying the area with a sharp eye. Her posture was tense, ever wary of possible threats. At her side, she kept a small sidearm, a weapon Ryder had given her with the stern reminder that Nadesport was a haven for outlaws, so one never walked unarmed. A figure approached, a short man with a mechanical eye that whirred as it focused on them. He wore a makeshift vest adorned with tools. "You looking for someone, stranger?" he asked, his tone suspicious. Ryder recognized him as Garen, one of the station's fixers. He offered a half-smile. "I'm looking for the Kelton family. They run the docks, if I recall. Name's Ryder. We had dealings years back." Garen squinted, mechanical eye gleaming. "Ryder? The one who helped secure that big haul from the drift storms?" "That's me." A gruff chuckle escaped Garen. "Huh, you survived. Not many do. The Keltons might be pleased to see you, or maybe not. They're at the upper deck lounge, near the salvage auctions." Without further ado, Garen wandered off, leaving them to navigate the crowd alone. Ryder gave Eona a curt nod, and the two made their way up a rickety metal staircase to a lofted area where the hum of voices mingled with the clink of half-empty cups. There, seated at a scarred metal table, was Lisa Kelton, matriarch of the family that effectively ruled the station. She wore a tattered coat embroidered with swirling patterns, and her hair was shaved to stubble. As Ryder approached, her eyes sparked with recognition, followed by guarded interest. Well, she purred in a raspy voice. "I didn't think we'd see your face again, Ryder. You usually keep your distances from these corners. Guess you found yourself in trouble." He shrugged, summoning a disarming smile. "We need a place to lay low for a spell. Figured I'd try my luck with old friends." Lisa laughed, a short bark that echoed. "You saved our convoy from those rogue drones all that time ago. I suppose that counts for something. Who's your companion?" She nodded toward Eona, curiosity flickering in her gaze. Eona kept her expression neutral. "Just a traveler," she said quietly. Lisa eyed her for a moment. "Right. Well, if you're with him, I won't pry for now. But let's be clear, stranger, Nadesport runs on favors and deals. We'll give you a place to stay off the main logs, but if the collective or some other giant fish come swimming around, don't expect us to fight your battles for you." Ryder nodded, relief stirring. "We're not asking you to go up against them. Just need to keep off their scanners and buy some time." Lisa drummed her fingers on the tabletop. "You'll have it, for a price? Our standard docking fees, plus a little extra for discretion. Let's say 10,000 credits. Non-negotiable." He grimaced. That was steep, but not unexpected. "Fine. We'll pay." He held her gaze, then added quietly, "We also need a few supplies. You got access to high-grade medical kits and an updated star map for the outer zones?" Lisa's eyes narrowed. "I can get those. But it's gonna cost. We'll manage." Her grin was predatory. "I thought so. Welcome back, Ryder." With that settled, the tension eased, and she motioned them toward a side corridor where they could find lodging. "You can stay in Baby. Don't cause trouble, and keep your heads down. Last thing we need is the collective sending warships to scavenge the station." Ryder and Eona thanked her, Eona more with a polite nod than words, and left to locate their temporary quarters. They found a cramped room with 2 bunks and a single flickering light overhead. It reeked of stale air, but at least it was private, and more importantly, off the official registry. Eona sighed, sitting on the edge of a bunk. "I've known worse accommodations," she said, almost joking. Ryder opened a small panel set in the wall, rummaging through odds and ends. "Lisa's crew may be mercenary, but they'll keep us hidden as long as we pay." Silence followed for a heartbeat. Eona's gaze wandered around the room, her expression distant. "All my life, or at least for as long as I can remember, I was told I'd be some sort of asset. For my people. For my clan. Then the war ended, the clan scattered, and I ended up in captivity. It's hard to trust anything now." He sat down across from her, meeting her gaze in the flickering light. "I get that. I'm not asking for blind faith. Just, let's survive this one step at a time." She frowned, as though battling an inner conflict. Then, a subtle nod. One step at a time. In the days that followed, they fell into a precarious rhythm. Ryder ventured into the station's market levels to bargain for supplies and check for any sign of bounty hunters. Eona tried to keep to their quarters, but found it suffocating. Occasionally, she would wander out, always armed and always alert, to observe the mishmash of station dwellers. Whispers circulated about the new arrivals. The station recognized Ryder from old tales, a quiet but efficient merc. Eona was a mystery. Rumors claimed she was some lost princess or an escaped science project. Regardless, in a place like Nady's Port, folks learned quickly not to pry too hard. Curiosity could be lethal. But the hush wouldn't last forever. The Hellion Drift was teeming with unscrupulous merchants who might tip off the highest bidder, the Collective, or anyone else who could pay for juicy intel. One evening, as Ryder tinkered with the Orion's thrusters, Eona slipped into the docking bay, her expression grave. "They're asking questions about me," she said softly. Some of Lisa's men overheard talk about a new bounty being circulated across the subspace channels. "There's a description that matches me, and it includes your name, too." Ryder swore under his breath. "They're persistent. I should have expected that." Eona crossed her arms. "So do we run again? Jump further out into the unknown? How many times can we do that before we're cornered?" He straightened, wiping grease from his hands. "I'm guessing you have a plan?" She hesitated, as though considering how much she should share. Then she spoke, each word laced with steely resolve. "I've heard whispers of a place called Verge. It's rumored to be a safe haven for those fleeing the Collective's expansions. Some sort of independent stronghold. Maybe we can vanish there, build a new life." Ryder's eyes narrowed. Verge is more myth than fact. No official star map points to it. Her chin lifted, defiance in her stance. "My clan had rumors. Maps scribbled in code, half lost across the diaspora. If I'm going to truly escape their grasp, it has to be somewhere the Collective can't find me. If the Verge exists, that might be the last refuge." He mulled this, the idea both daunting and strangely enticing. Even if it does exist, it won't be easy to find. She raised a data crystal from her pocket. "I've been collecting fragments of information about it for years. They took all my possessions, but not this. It was hidden in a place they never bothered to check. If we can decode it, maybe we'll find coordinates." A slow smile touched Ryder's lips. "So that's why the Collective is chasing you so doggedly. They suspect you have something that can lead them to new territory, or at least to a hidden bastion that stands against them." Eona shrugged. "That's part of it. They also want to experiment on me. My clan's genetic traits might hold strategic value." Her jaw clenched. "I won't let them cage me again." Ryder stared at the data crystal glinting in the dim light of the docking bay. "Then let's decode it. And if it leads us anywhere real, we'll head there." She nodded, relief flickering across her face. Their eyes met, and for a moment, an unspoken bond passed between them, an alliance forged by necessity and something deeper that neither dared articulate. Soon after, they gathered in the Orion's cockpit. Ryder had set up a makeshift decryption rig, hooking the data crystal into the ship's outdated but robust systems. Eona watched the lines of code scroll across a flickering display. Occasionally, a set of coordinates or star chart fragments appeared, but incomplete. She input what she remembered from her clan's stories, cross-referencing old celestial markers. Hours turned into days. Outside, Nady's Port carried on with its usual hustle, unaware of the quiet drama unfolding in the Orion. The Collective's bounty notices grew more frequent. They had begun searching remote stations and outposts, hoping to track Eona's path. One night, as Eona pored over charts of swirling star clusters, an excited spark lit her face. "Ryder, look here." She pointed to a battered star map that overlapped with the decrypted fragments. These coordinates, combined with the anomaly readings, suggest a hidden system near the edge of the known quadrant. Ryder rubbed his chin. "It's close enough to the galactic rim that it could remain off most NAV charts. That might be the Verge." They were quiet for a moment, the gravity of this discovery settling in. Eona swallowed, her voice hesitant. "If we go there, there's a chance it's a wild star system filled with dangers. But there's also a chance it's exactly what we need, a place to break the Collective's chains once and for all." Ryder nodded. "We'll have to prepare, gather enough resources to withstand the journey, and then get out before the Collective closes in on us here." Eona's eyes gleamed. "Let's do it." Before dawn the next morning, they settled their debts with Lisa, though the station matriarch tried to squeeze them for additional hush money. The sum was extortionate, but Ryder paid without flinching, not wanting to risk a betrayal that would give away their route. They took on fuel, rations, and spare parts. Eona managed to trade for a set of upgraded weapons, the better to defend themselves if the Collective found them in flight. At last, they were ready to depart. The Orion hummed with renewed vigor as they maneuvered out of the docking clamp. Eona took the co-pilot's seat, hands hovering near the controls. She had been learning the basics of flight under Ryder's occasional tutelage, her determination to be self-sufficient unwavering. Ryder keyed in the coordinates gleaned from their puzzle of star charts, mindful that this jump would lead them through uncharted and likely perilous territory. Just as the engines were charging for an FTL leap, a proximity alarm shrieked. Collective ships, inbound, Eona muttered, checking the sensor readouts. They've set up an intercept vector. 5 cruisers, at least, and fighter support. Ryder's jaw tightened. They must have caught wind of our location after all. He tapped in a rapid series of commands, glancing at Eona. If we delay, they'll trap us. Are we good to jump? She swallowed. The calculations are rough. We might jump into an asteroid field or worse. But if we stay, we're finished. His mouth set in a grim line. Hold on tight. Outside the cockpit window, the station's comms erupted in chaos. Collective fighters swooped in with practiced precision, searching for their quarry. The Orion's thrusters flared to maximum. Eona braced, her heart pounding, as the swirl of distant stars began to stretch. Then, like a dagger slicing through reality, the ship tore into FTL, leaving the Hellion drift and its startled defenders behind. For a moment, the swirling tunnel of faster-than-light travel held them in its tenuous grip, buffeted by cosmic distortions. Then, in a sudden lurch that knocked them both back in their seats, they dropped out near an unknown system. The sensors screamed with red warnings. They were close, too close, to a dying star whose angry flares lashed out like whips. Ryder wrestled with the controls, fighting gravitational surges that threatened to rip the Orion apart. Eona hastily redirected power to the shields. Coordinates were off by a fraction, she gasped, bracing herself against a console that sparked. We might have to circle around the star's perimeter to realign. Clenching his teeth, Ryder guided the Orion into a sweeping arc, skimming the edge of the star's corona. The hull temperature soared, the ship rattling as though in the jaws of some colossal beast. Finally, with a sputtering cough of the main engine, they cleared the lethal orbit and found themselves drifting in open space again. Smoke curled from the control panel, and Eona coughed as she waved a hand in front of her face. That was close. Ryder exhaled, heart hammering. We're alive. He motioned to the readouts. Now let's see where in the galaxy we actually landed. She fiddled with the NAV console, inputting partial star charts. We're in the approximate region. The data suggests we should be near the rumored location of Thaurian Verge. But there's a lot of interference, some sort of natural phenomenon, maybe a nebula or an energy field. He activated the sensors, scanning the darkness. The faint ping of distant objects came back to them, and sure enough, an unusual cluster of gravitational anomalies stretched across half the sector. Ryder's brow furrowed. That might be the barrier hiding the Verge. Eona nodded. Yes. If we can navigate through it without the Orion being torn apart, we could find the system. Legend says that's how the Verge stayed hidden. Ryder set the ship into a slow approach, letting the sensors map the anomalies. In the distance, flickers of cosmic lightning illuminated swirling masses of dust and gas. The readouts warned of unstable wormholes, pockets of intense radiation, and drifting debris from unknown origins. He shook his head, pushing away the doubt. We've come this far. Let's see it through. The Orion drifted forward, inch by inch, as Eona fed data into an improvised route calculation. The star behind them continued to flare, painting the void in shifting shades of crimson and gold. Gradually, they penetrated deeper into the anomalies, the hull groaning and the engine sputtering in protest. The tension was palpable. Eona's knuckles were white against the console. Ryder's eyes flickered from sensor reading to sensor reading, adjusting course microseconds before collisions with swirling debris. It felt like threading a cosmic needle, guided by faith as much as by skill. Then, a soft beep signaled a clear corridor. Before them, the anomalies parted, revealing a gentle glow in the distance, like a ring of light that shimmered behind a gossamer veil. Eona's breath caught. That has to be it. Ryder guided the Orion through, and as they emerged on the other side, a stunning vista greeted them, a small, warm sun orbited by several planets, each encircled by shimmering rings of cosmic crystals. The sensor readout stabilized, and the engine's hum eased to a steady drone. For a long moment, they simply stared. The system was breathtaking, as though untouched by the strife that plagued the rest of the galaxy. Eona's eyes shone with a mixture of awe and relief. We made it, she whispered. Ryder exhaled slowly. Now, let's find a place to land. They approached one of the inner planets, reading stable atmospherics and signs of liquid water. The planet's surface glimmered with vast oceans dotted by emerald continents. As they neared orbit, an alert blinked on the console, a faint signal, repeating on an old frequency. Eona stiffened. Someone's here. Ryder tuned the ship's comm systems to the archaic signal. Amid static and garbled transmissions, a calm voice emerged. Welcome, travelers, to Thaurian Verge. Identify yourselves peacefully, and you may approach. We are the Circle of Wayfarers. Sharing a look of surprise, they quickly responded. Eona's voice trembled as she introduced them. This is Eona and Ryder. We come in peace, seeking refuge. A pause followed, then the voice returned with gentle warmth. Coordinates are being sent. You'll find a safe landing zone near the white beaches west of the Palace Range. We extend our greetings to those who find their way here, so long as your hearts do not bear malice. The Orion systems lit up with a new set of coordinates, guiding them through the planet's atmosphere. As they descended, a breathtaking panorama unfolded, lush forests, towering mountains, and rolling plains that caught the golden rays of the star. The designated landing zone was a broad, sandy coast near a small settlement of sleek structures blending into the natural surroundings. When the Orion settled onto the soft ground, the hum of the engines faded. Eona and Ryder exchanged a hopeful glance, then lowered the ramp. A temperate breeze greeted them, tinged with the scent of salt water and wild blossoms. Several figures approached, clad in simple garments, their expressions welcoming yet cautious. An older woman stepped forward. Her hair was braided with tiny shells, and her eyes spoke of years of wisdom. I am Rowena, voice of the circle. You've come a long way. Eona swallowed, stepping down onto the sand. Yes, we've been running from the collective. We hoped this place was real, a safe haven. Rowena gave a slow, respectful nod. We have wards here. The storms at the system's edge keep most from finding us, and we prefer it that way. But if you mean no harm, we won't turn you away. Ryder followed, scanning the horizon. There were dwellings nestled among the hills, small gardens, and a few watchtowers that hinted at a community prepared for defense. Yet it all felt peaceful, as though shielded from the galaxy's chaos. We mean no harm, Ryder said softly. Just looking for a chance to live without fear. A gentle smile spread across Rowena's face. Then be welcome. We'll speak more of your stories soon. For now, let us offer you food and a place to rest. With that, they were ushered toward the settlement. Eona felt a surge of cautious elation in her chest. She glanced at Ryder, and though he wore his usual stoic expression, she caught a glimmer in his eyes, relief, perhaps, or gratitude that they had found somewhere to breathe. But neither dared to forget the lingering threat of the collective. If they had tracked Eona across the Hellion Drift and beyond, who was to say they wouldn't eventually discover the Verge? For now, though, they embraced a fragile calm, stepping onto fresh soil in a place that might, at long last, become a home. Days passed, and a gentle routine formed under Thaurian's bright sun. Rowena and her community shared their ways, a balance of technology and respect for nature, forging harmony that Eona had never thought possible. At times, she found herself standing on a cliff edge, gazing at sweeping valleys, breathing in the crisp air. It felt surreal, this sudden sense of freedom. Ryder, though slower to trust, found odd jobs around the settlement. He repaired old machinery, upgraded perimeter sensors, and even sparred with the local defenders to sharpen everyone's skills. Each evening, he and Eona would reunite in a small cabin they had been given, an unspoken promise in their eyes that, for once, they might rest. But the threat of the collective still loomed in their minds. Rumors swirled that a new wave of warships had begun probing the outskirts of the galaxy. Tensions rose among the Verge's inhabitants, who feared detection. One crisp dawn, as Eona and Ryder stood atop a hill overlooking the settlement, Rowena approached them with a gentle smile. Your presence here has brought both hope and anxiety, she admitted. Some worry that your enemies will find us, yet many believe we should stand with you, not hide. Eona's voice trembled slightly. We never meant to draw danger upon you. Rowena shook her head. No, our choice is made. We will defend our home if it comes to that. But I sense in both of you the seeds of belonging. Perhaps, in time, we won't just be protecting you. You'll be protecting us as well. Ryder glanced at Eona. The corners of his lips turned upward in a rare, soft smile. We've been running for too long, he said quietly. It's time to stand still, to have a family, if you'll have us. Eona's eyes shone, tears threatening. She took his hand, interlacing their fingers. Yes, she murmured. This is where we make our stand. And so it was decided. The day the collective finally dared to breach the anomalies at the system's edge, they met not just two fugitives, but an entire, united community. The Verge's hidden strengths, its cunning defenders, camouflaged outposts, and advanced tech grown from a respect for the world, proved too formidable. Ryder led a defense that caught the enemy off guard, crippling their forward fleet. Eona, her old warrior instincts reawakened, coordinated a shield network that rendered the settlement invisible to scanning arrays. Before long, the collective was forced to retreat, limping back into the void. Cheers rose among the settlement, echoing across the crystal-laced sea. Under a sky jeweled with countless stars, Ryder and Eona found themselves at the center of a grateful circle of families. Laughter, music, and the scent of cook fires filled the air. This was the warmth of true belonging, the family Eona never had, the kinship Ryder long believed he'd lost. Hand in hand, they stood on the threshold of a new life. And as dawn broke over the horizon, painting the landscape in dazzling gold, Eona smiled at Ryder, tears of joy shining in her eyes. They had found more than a hiding place. They had found home. At last, they were free, together, reduced to a commodity no longer, bound now by courage and love. And in that precious moment, beneath the gentle sun of Thaurian Verge, they knew this was the start of a future they would shape as one.